Welcome back, dear listener. You've returned to the quiet space where wonder sleeps beside you, where science doesn't demand your attention, it simply whispers, where every fact unfolds like a lullaby, and the earth itself begins to speak. Tonight, we journey beneath your feet to a world that never sleeps, even when you do. To slow-moving giants made of stone. To a restless earth that gently shifts and sighs. You may not feel it, but continents are quietly drifting, riding on the breath of fire beneath the crust. Mountains are being born. Oceans are opening. The ground you trust is not as still as it seems. So close your eyes. Let your body grow heavy and still as we travel deep below the surface to listen to the slow, ancient rhythm of a planet that never stops moving. This is the story of plate tectonics, why continents never rest, and it begins softly now. Asterisk, asterisk, you lie still. Your body sinks into the mattress, soft and quiet. The world around you hushes. The lights are low. But somewhere deep inside you, a subtle awareness lingers. You feel the silence not as emptiness, but as presence. A weight, a pulse. As if the ground beneath you is not entirely still. Because it isn't. Beneath your quiet room, beneath the floorboards, beneath the layers of stone and soil and time, the earth is breathing. Not in gasps or sighs, but in a long, slow rhythm. It moves not in seconds, but in centuries. It hums in a language older than words, in the language of heat and gravity, pressure and resistance. You can't hear it with your ears, but your bones have always known. You lie on a giant crust that floats. The continents, those vast, unmoving stretches of land you learned about in childhood, are not fixed. They are not rooted. They drift, they slide, they collide, ever so slowly but relentlessly. The floor of the earth is made of plates, immense, broken pieces of its surface moving atop a deeper, softer layer. The earth, it turns out, is not solid all the way through. It is restless. Imagine a cracked eggshell floating on a warm liquid. The cracks don't heal. They shift. They stretch. They move apart. That's your planet. The surface beneath your city, your forests, your oceans, is a shattered jigsaw puzzle that never quite settles. And you, without knowing, have always been moving. You drift across the globe, carried not by wind or wave, but by stone. The very land under your home is inching along a journey that began before you were born and will continue long after you are gone. The motion is too slow to notice in a single lifetime, but it is constant. This is not chaos. This is order on a scale we cannot feel. The surface of the earth is made of tectonic plates. Like sheets of ice floating on a dark sea, they glide above a hot, flowing layer of mantle. The plates are vast. Some stretch for thousands of kilometers. Some carry entire continents. Others lie beneath oceans, hidden from our eyes, but not from our weight. They fit together like a mosaic, their edges meeting in quiet, invisible tension, and below them, the earth moves. Deep in the mantle, heat rises, not in flames, but in currents, convection, like warm water rising in a pot. The hot mantle lifts upward in great, slow loops, and then cools and sinks again. These cycles never stop. They churn the mantle like breath moves a lung, and they push the plates. It is the hidden fire that makes the earth restless. The same fire that warms its core, the same ancient heat from the planet's birth still swirls beneath your feet. It moves countenance the way wind moves clouds, gently, gradually, but always. You begin to see it, not with your eyes, but with imagination. Close your eyes now. Picture the map of the world. The familiar shapes of Africa, of Asia, of the Americas. Now imagine them drifting, just a little, sliding slowly across a surface you cannot see. In the time it takes for a single breath, they haven't moved at all. But in the time it takes for mountains to rise, they have changed everything. You feel the quiet wonder of deep time. There was a time when all the continents were one. Pangaea, a single supercontinent. One landmass, ringed by ocean. But the earth does not like permanence. Heat built beneath it. The plates strained against one another, and eventually they broke apart. Not in an explosion, but in a slow, patient drift. Over millions of years, Pangaea became many. It split and spread, and the pieces became the continents, you know. Africa slid away from South America, pulling the ocean open behind it. India journeyed north and collided with Asia, pushing up the Himalayas in the process. Australia wandered outward, an island adrift. The Atlantic grew wider. The Pacific reshaped itself, and still they move. You are part of that story. You sleep on a continent that is traveling even now. A journey without wheels or sails or engines. A migration of stone. The earth is not fragile, but it is not still. Sometimes its motion is gentle, imperceptible, but sometimes it speaks in sharper ways. The friction of two plates can cause the earth to shudder. Earthquakes are the sudden memories of this tension. A reminder that even stone has a threshold. But tonight, there is no shudder. There is only drift. Only the slow, planetary exhale. You begin to feel held by it. There is a comfort in knowing the ground beneath you is not dead. It is alive in the way old things live. Steady, strong, unhurried. You may rest, but the earth continues. It carries you in your sleep. It remembers every mountain it ever built, every valley it ever swallowed, and in its own silent way, it welcomes your presence. You may wonder, what does it mean for something to move so slowly you can't feel it? Is it movement, if there is, No sensation. Is it stillness or simply patience? This is the paradox of plate tectonics. Change that looks like permanence. You feel a reverence growing in your chest, the way you might feel near an ancient tree, or a river that has carved stone over centuries. This planet moves with purpose, not haste. Even silence has a heartbeat. Somewhere beneath your feet, a ridge is spreading. Molten rock rises, cools, becomes crust. Somewhere else, a plate sinks beneath another, swallowed back into the mantle. Recycling, renewal. The earth has no waste. It reshapes itself over and over, in cycles older than life. You are lying on a world that breathes stone, not. Every breath is visible, but every breath matters. The ocean floor beneath you is younger than the continents. It forms at the Medo-Shen ridges, where magma pushes upward, making new crust. This new crust slowly spreads, pushing older crust away, creating oceans and moving continents. Even now, at the bottom of the sea, fire shapes the land. You imagine the Atlantic Ocean, growing wider by centimeters every year. You imagine the Pacific shrinking slowly, its edges consumed by subduction. A planetary balance, expansion and return. Always in motion, always becoming. This is not the chaos of violence. It is the peace of momentum. The earth is a story told in stone. Its pages are deep and dark, but not unreadable. You are learning to listen, to feel the hush beneath the hush. You begin to trust that what seems still may be more alive than anything moving fast. The earth teaches you patience, teaches you that slowness is not stagnation. It is power stretched over time. You breathe, and the planet breathes with you. You are both made of movement. You are both shaped by forces you do not always understand. The difference is only scale. The plates beneath you are vast, but their motion is intimate. It creates the mountains you climb, the valleys you cross, lakes where your ancestors once stood. Every part of your landscape is a result of this long, silent movement. And so, as you drift into sleep, remember this: the ground beneath you is never truly still. It holds you, yes, but it also carries you. Slowly, gently, endlessly, endlessly, and tomorrow. When you wake, the land will have moved, just a little, just enough. You awaken gently into a world that still feels like dream. The warmth of sleep hasn't quite left your skin. And yet, something stirs beneath you. Not loud, not violent, but deep and ancient. The earth, once imagined as solid and still, now feels more like a great floating cradle. You remember what you learned before you slept. The land you live on is moving, even now. And tonight, you go deeper into that truth. You lie still again, but your mind wanders downward. Past the trees and soil, past the bones of ancient animals, through layers of rock laid down by forgotten seas. Until you reach something unexpected, a break, a boundary. The Earth's outer skin, the crust, is not one seamless blanket, but a collection of vast, broken pieces, like a puzzle scattered across a floor, like cracked ice floating on warm water. Your oceans, all of it, rides atop these giant, shifting fragments. These fragments have a name: tectonic plates. But tonight, you won't study them like diagrams in a book. Tonight, you'll feel them as something alive, slow, deliberate, unshakable in their purpose. You imagine Earth as a great breathing organism, and these plates are its armor moving gently across a sea of softened stone below. That softened stone, the asthenosphere, is not liquid, not quite, but warm enough, soft enough for rock to flow like honey, if you are patient enough to watch for millions of years. There are 7 great plates, continents riding on their backs, and many smaller ones too, shifting like leaves atop a pond stirred by wind. Some plates drift apart. Some collide, slowly grinding and folding as if in embrace. You think of how things break in silence, how ice cracks at dawn, how old walls separate over time, how love sometimes fades without anyone noticing. The Earth, too, breaks in silence. You follow a line, not on a map, but in your imagination, where 2 plates meet. It runs across the seafloor, where molten rock pushes upward from below. This is a divergent boundary, a place of quiet, creation. Here, the crust is being pulled apart, and new land is born in the gap. Magma rises, cools, and becomes seafloor. You see the mid-Atlantic ridge, a spine of newborn Earth, running through the ocean like a scar. North America and Europe are slowly drifting apart because of it, only a few centimeters a year. But still, enough. Far away, you sense another kind of edge, one where plates don't part but press hard into each other. These are convergent boundaries where crust is crushed, bent, and sometimes swallowed. You imagine the Himalayas, not just mountains, but monuments to a slow collision between India and Asia. The plates beneath them still push forward, like waves that never cease. You can almost hear the sound it makes, not a roar, but a deep, invisible hum, like the groaning of wood in a quiet house. Some plates don't push or pull, they slide. You think of the San Andreas Fault in California, 2 plates, side by side, brushing past each other over centuries. Their edges are jagged, not smooth. Tension builds in silence, then suddenly releases in earthquakes that shake the world above. And yet, this too is part of a grand design. Not destruction, but motion. Not chaos, but balance. You begin to wonder, why are the plates moving at all? What stirs such slow, immense things? And then, gently, the memory returns from the last chapter. The heat beneath the earth, the convection currents in the mantle rising and falling like the breath of the planet. Warm rock rises, cools, and sinks again, pulling the plates above along with it. Like dough on a rolling sea, the crust is carried by these unseen rivers of warmth. It humbles you. These movements are so slow you'd never feel them in a single lifetime. But over millions of years, continents drift apart like estranged siblings. Oceans open, mountains crumble, and new ones rise. What feels eternal to you? The outline of a coastline. The shape of a mountain range is just a temporary gesture written in moving stone. You think of Africa and South America. Once, long ago, they were joined, one land, one story. But the plates beneath them pulled gently apart, and the ocean filled the space in between. Even now, the Atlantic Ocean grows a little wider every year. Not that you would notice. It's the kind of change only the earth remembers. The thought comforts you, somehow, that even separation can be natural. That drifting is not always loss, but simply the rhythm of existence. That what breaks apart may simply be following the curve of some larger motion as you drift further into this imagined world. You picture the earth not as a static sphere, but as something much more fluid. A slow ballet of plates dancing atop. Heat and gravity and time. Each plate knows its pace. Each boundary tells a different story. You learn to recognize these boundaries not just physically, but emotionally. Where plates meet, the earth speaks more clearly. Here are the places where volcanoes erupt, where mountains rise, where earthquakes remind us of the world beneath. These are the edges of the shell where pressure builds and change is born. You lie still again, now aware that your stillness is an illusion. Even as you rest, your body is moving, carried gently on a plate that inches forward across the surface of the earth. You think of a great, drifting ship made of stone, gliding slowly through time. You begin to notice the beauty in the cracks, in the lines that separate one plate from another, in the imperfect puzzle of the planet's skin. You think of how trees grow where faults have shifted, how water fills the spaces left behind, how even broken things create the most intricate patterns. You realize the earth isn't broken, not in the way you once thought. It is shaped by motion. And motion, no matter how slow, is the signature of life. You wonder what it would feel like to stand at a plate boundary, to place your hand on the ground and feel the tension below. Not dramatic, not dangerous, just a patient pressure. A conversation between rock and heat and time. You think you would feel awe and a kind of peace. Now, your mind wanders toward the next layer of this story. You've seen the cracks, the drifting plates, the gentle collisions. But what lies beneath those plates? What makes them move, not just sideways, but downward? Where one plate sinks beneath another, and disappears into the earth. You feel the weight of that idea of descent, of return. The surface breaks, and the deep earth welcomes its skin back into fire. A kind of recycling, a kind of rebirth, but also a mystery. What happens in those depths, where rock melts again into heat? What becomes of a plate after it sinks? These are questions for another night. For now, you rest again. Not on solid ground, but on a drifting fragment of a restless world. The earth holds you, yes, but it also moves with you. And somewhere beneath you, the shell breathes. The cracks shift. The plates press onward, slow, silent, eternal tomorrow. You'll follow them into the fire. Asterisk, asterisk, you sleep, but the planet does not. Beneath your dreaming body, the earth continues its slow, molten dance. You had drifted off with a memory of sinking plates and vanishing crust. The idea that even land, firm and familiar, eventually returns to the deep. But what is that deep? What lies below the surface story of shifting slabs and fractured plates? The answer lies in the fire that never dies. You descend again, not through the ocean floor this time, but deeper into the thick layer beneath the crust, the mantle. It is not a place of open flame, not a chamber of roaring heat, but something slower, older, more immense. It moves like breath held in stone. Heat spreads here like syrup across time, slow, patient, eternal. You do not fall. You float downward, gently, as if gravity is more suggestion than rule in this place. The air fades, light fades, but warmth grows. It isn't a burning warmth, not yet. It is the kind of warmth that lives in your chest when you are close to someone you trust. A memory of fire more than fire itself. Around you, rock flows. You didn't know stone could move like this. Slow waves frozen in mid-thought. Like lava that hasn't quite decided whether to sleep or rise. This is not the rigid crust, not the outer shell of plates and pressure. This is the realm beneath all that. The Earth's middle, its engine dot, here, heat is born in silence. The mantle is vast. It stretches from just below the crust to halfway, down to the planet's core, thousands of kilometers deep. And though it is solid, it behaves like a fluid. Not in our time, not in days or years, but over millennia, over the age of continents. You float through a river of slow motion. Minerals melt and reform here. Some rise in ribbons. Others fall in sheets. And through it all, heat pulses, not from the sun, but from within. The earth is not merely warmed by the stars. It warms itself. It carries a furnace inside its body. You sense it now, the source of this inner fire. Some of it is left over. From the earth's birth, a lingering heat from the time when dust and gas clashed and clumped and caught flame. But more of it is made new each day. From radioactive elements deep in the mantle's belly, uranium, thorium, potassium, they decay. And in that decay, they release whispers of warmth. Billions of tiny heat makers scattered through the deep rock, quietly fueling the engine of the world. The fire here has no flames, no crackle. It doesn't rage like a bonfire or flash like lightning. It moves like thought, like memory, like time itself. You drift past massive plumes of rising heat, upwellings of mantle material that push gently upward, stretching the crust from below. These plumes are not angry. They are patient. They build islands, feed volcanoes, break continents apart one breath at a time. You picture Hawaii rising from the sea, fed from beneath by a hotspot like this, a slow, steady drip of melted rock building land where there was none. Then your vision shifts. You move sideways through the mantle's flow. This isn't just an upward dance. There is motion in all directions, great conveyor belts of solid rock slowly cycling. Some parts sink old cold slabs dragged down at subduction zones. Others rise warmer materials buoyed by their heat. This is convection, the planet's way of stirring its own pot. A heat-driven choreography, like soup swirling gently in a vast, invisible pot. And, through it all, the continents ride above, like quiet passengers. Mountains rise, oceans shift, but they are only symptoms of this deeper current. The real driver of tectonic life is here, in this gentle, unseen tide of heat. You press your hand to the airless rock and imagine you can feel it. Not the heat, but the motion, the patience, the ancient purpose. This layer is the mediator between surface and core, the bridge between life above and fire below. And if you listen, it tells you. This change comes slowly, but it comes. Even stone, given time, flows. You find yourself drawn to a place where the mantle meets the crust again, but from below. A volcano sleeps here. Its roots stretch deep into the mantle, drinking slow fire, waiting. Not every volcano erupts with drama and noise. Some swell quietly, some wait centuries. But all of them are connected to this deep warmth. All of them are children of the mantle's breath. You sit now beside that heat, not touching, not needing. 2. You simply observe. You begin to understand that what burns beneath is not chaos, but structure. A rhythm, a thermal heartbeat, and yet there is mystery. Even now, science cannot fully map this layer. We know it exists. We model its flows. We read its signals in the way continents move and volcanoes form. But we cannot touch it directly. No drill has ever reached it. No human has seen it. But here, in your dream body, you have drifted through it. You have listened to it speak. The mantle does not ask to be known. It does not demand attention. It moves beneath us, steady, constant, shaping our world without applause. It is the quiet artist of the earth, painting continents not with brushes, but with buoyancy and time. You close your eyes in the warmth, letting your thoughts rise like magma. Not in violence, but in wonder. You think of how continents slide apart, how mountains rise, how oceans deepen, all because this layer moves. The slow fire beneath our feet is not destruction. It is motion. It is possibility, and still it burns quietly, endlessly. You begin to rise now, carried upward by the currents of thought and molten dream. The crust returns above you, solid again, familiar. But you carry the warmth with you. Not just the heat, but the knowledge of it. The sense that all change begins where no eyes can see. The surface may tremble, the plates may drift, but beneath it all, a secret fire stirs the future. And somewhere beyond even that fire, deeper still, waits the core, the earth's hidden heart, pulsing with power. But that is a journey for another night. You rise from the mantle slowly, like a bubble of warmth, surfacing through layers of thought. The crust, once an abstract boundary, becomes real again, a familiar firmness beneath your dream feet. But now you know it is not fixed. It shifts, it grows, it breathes, and just beneath it, the earth continues its gentle labor, pushing, stretching, creating. You find yourself floating now, far above the continents, suspended in a night sky that has no wind, no noise, only depth. But even here, above it all, you feel the tug of motion below. Beneath the vast ocean, something is stirring, not with violence, not with urgency, but with a steady persistence. You drift downward, following the pull of warmth, until the darkness of deep ocean surrounds you. There is no light, no sound, only pressure and time. And then something remarkable, a seam, a scar, a place where the earth opens from within. It is here, at the bottom of the world, that new land is born. Mid-ocean ridges rise like great underwater mountain ranges, stitched across the seafloor like the spine of a sleeping giant. They are not made by erosion or collision, but by creation. Molten rock rising from the mantle, cooled by water and hardened into crust. These ridges are not explosive or loud. They are slow. They are methodical. And they are always at work. You imagine the earth pulling apart ever so gently at these seams. The plates on either side drift away, centimeter by centimeter, year by year. And as they do, magma from the mantle seeps upward to fill the gap. The ocean floor is not a quiet bed of stone. It is a moving walkway, carrying continents on a journey they did not choose, but cannot refuse. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, you learn, is one such place, a line of fire, buried beneath the ocean. On one side lies North America, on the other, Europe and Africa. They were once closer, connected in the ancient supercontinent called Pangaea. But now they drift farther apart, not by sudden leaps, but by a few inches every year. Over time, those inches become miles, and over millions of years, those miles reshape the world. You trace the ridge in your mind, like a scar running across the face of the deep. It is not a flaw, but a place of birth, the Earth's way of starting again. Where the plates stretch, new crust is made. New paths form. New maps are drawn beneath waters that never rest. And still, it goes on. Every moment, new rock is added. Not in grand eruptions, but in slow exhalations of heat. It is as if the earth sighs, and in that sigh, continents drift apart. Somewhere near Iceland, you see where the ridge breaches the surface. There, you find volcanic islands, black rock steaming in cold air. A reminder that what happens in the deep eventually finds its way to light. The land itself is young here. You can feel it. You can smell it. The sulfur and ash, the heat and ash, the heat and steam. Even the ground beneath your feet feels temporary, like it is still deciding what it wants to become. You kneel beside a warm fissure and place your hand on the rock. It vibrates faintly, not with sound, but with the quiet pulse of making. This is the edge of a plate. This is the seam of creation. And you are here, in a moment between movements, watching the world rebuild itself. As you sit with this knowing, you think of how strange it is that such power can be so silent, that oceans can be split without storms, that continents can drift without breaking. You think of how human motion is noisy, always striving, always hurrying. But the earth moves differently. It waits, it breathes, it expands in whispers, and then you notice something else. Not all ridges stretch the ocean. Some tear at the land itself. In East Africa, you walk along another kind of ridge, a rift valley, where the continent itself is pulling apart. The land is splitting slowly, cracking open like old paint. It doesn't scream. It doesn't rush. It just changes, grain by grain. Lakes form where the ground sinks. Volcanoes rise where the crust thins. The earth opens, not in anger, but in deep, geological meditation. You pause at the edge of the rift. It looks like a scar, but it is a promise, a beginning. The continent will divide, shorelines will shift, islands will be born. And all of this begins with a ridge, a quiet line of possibility. Back beneath the oceans, you return to the mid-ocean ridges and feel the rhythm of their breath. The lava rises, cools, and hardens. The plate drift. The ocean floor renews itself again, a kind of slow heartbeat in stone. You imagine continents as ships riding these invisible waves. They do not steer themselves. They are moved by forces older than memory, deeper than sight. You think of Earth as a living body. The ridges are its growth plates. The rifts are its stretching muscles. The plates are its skin, always renewing, always in motion. Above you, the stars remain fixed. But here, at the bottom of the sea, everything is changing. And you realize the stillness we feel on land is not real. It is a pause in perception. The planet beneath us is dancing. Always, you breathe with the rhythm now. Slow, deep, carried by motion. Too vast to name, you walk along the crest of a Midocian ridge in your mind's dreamscape. With each step, you trace the newest layer of earth, still warm from its birth. This path, submerged in water and time, is part of a process that never ends. It reminds you that the Earth's surface is not a finished work, but an evolving sketch, a masterpiece in motion. You imagine the journey of a single basalt rock, newly formed and cooling, slowly carried away from the ridge by the spreading seafloor. It drifts for thousands of years, millimeter by millimeter, bearing the memory of where it began. One day, it may sink again, melted and reborn in another part of the world. Even stone is not immune to transformation. The more you look, the more you see. Fracture zones slicing across the ocean floor like healing wounds. Transform faults, shifting sideways with quiet tension. Hydrothermal vents, breathing warmth and minerals into the cold abyss. Life gathers near those vents, not the kind you know, but strange, glowing forms that feed not on sunlight, but on chemistry. Even here, life finds a way to grow from the heat of creation. And so the ridges are not just places where Earth expands. They are places where life begins again, over and over. A reminder that growth comes from the edges, from the boundaries, from the places where things part and space is made for something new. You rest now near one such vent, your dream body, warmed by invisible heat. The minerals glisten like stars in the black water. Tube worms sway gently, blind and content. You feel the pulse of the ridge like a lullaby, slow and ancient. The earth does not rest. It stretches, it sighs, it renews. And as you lie with this, knowing, you think not only of continents and oceans, but of all things that grow in quiet, the way ideas spread, the way hearts open, the way change unfolds without noise. You close your eyes in the dark water, drifting once more toward the surface, toward light. But part of you stays behind, listening to the breath of the ridge. You know now, stillness is only how it looks. Beneath every calm, there is motion, and as the ocean floor fades, you feel another pull, deeper and darker, a downward drift. The plates that stretch must also descend. Creation and collapse are bound together. And you are being called to witness what happens when the earth folds inward. You sense the pull of gravity now, gentle but insistent, calling the crust downward, calling it home. But that is a journey for the next dream. You drift in a soft pull of gravity, the thought of it still warm from the dream before. The ridges fall away behind you now, left glowing faintly in memory, like fireflies in deep water. You feel the downward tug, gentle but persistent, like sleep calling to the waking mind. The earth exhales new crust through its ridges, yes, but it also inhales, drawing spent rock back into its molten lungs. This is the other half of the breath. This is subduction. You descend slowly into the darkness where old crust folds. Into deeper places. You are not falling. You are being carried down a long slope, carved by time, pulled by something vast and invisible. This is not violence. This is return. The ocean floor that once rose newborn at the ridges now ages, cools, and grows dense. Like tired skin, it sags and slides beneath its neighboring plates, sinking into the mantle it once escaped. Here, in the quiet folds of subduction zones, Earth reclaims what it has given. You imagine it like a great, slow bowing of the crust. Not defeat, but reverence. The edge of one plate dips beneath another, disappearing into the deep. The boundary between them is not sharp, not sudden, but curved and subtle, a gesture shaped by millennia. It is gravity's long game, turning ocean floors into fuel. Above this buried line, an arc of volcanoes often forms a chain of fire, rising where the crust melts again. The Pacific Ring of Fire, you learn, circles nearly half the globe with such fiery arcs. Japan, Indonesia, the Andes, the Cascades, all born from this quiet surrender. The sinking slab presses downward, heats under pressure, and releases water from its ancient rocks. That water softens the mantle above, making it melt. And where there is melt, there is motion. And where there is motion, mountains rise. Watch as magma blooms upward, like thought forming in the back of a mind. Sometimes the earth speaks through eruption. Other times it merely warms the crust above, folding new minerals into stone, shaping landscapes slowly. Even destruction here is a kind of artistry. The volcano is not a tantrum. It is a threshold. Fire from below, sky above and in between. The alchemy of transformation. And the earthquakes, you feel them too. You float now along the fault lines that crisscross these subduction zones. Tension builds in the rocks as one plate grinds beneath another. They resist, they strain, they hold, until they don't. In one silent instant, everything shifts. Crust snaps forward, and the tremor travels like a memory through stone. Cities shake, oceans rise. But long after the wave has passed, the motion continues deep below, quiet and unseen. You rest near the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean, where the Pacific Plate dives beneath the Philippine Sea Plate. You feel the gravity here, like a breath taken inward, slow, steady, sacred. This is not the end of the plate. You realize it is a return. The crust becomes mantle once more. What once surfaced in the light now journeys into darkness, not to die, but to transform. You imagine it as a cycle, a loop of stone and time. At the ridges, earth makes new crust. At the trenches, it folds the old crust away. Creation and destruction are not opposites, they are dancers. One leads, the other follows, and together they keep the rhythm of the world. Your dream body drifts sideways now, drawn toward the Andes. Along the coast of South America, the oceanic Nazca Plate presses beneath the continental South American plate. You watch as the edge of the land lifts, pushed upward by the force of subduction. Mountains rise, not in hours or years, but in millimeters and centuries. The summit of Aconcagua stands high, cold and cloud-trapped, its roots sunk deep into the struggle below. You trace a line with your thoughts from ocean trench to mountain peak. It is a path carved by gravity and heat, by pressure and patience. And all along this invisible journey, the planet reshapes itself, building and breaking, lifting and lowering, without ever stopping. The land is not fixed, it is folded. And in every fold, a story sleeps. You walk through Chile now, along streets once shaken by megathrust quakes. You feel the history beneath your feet, not in buildings or maps, but in the arrangement of the stones. This place remembers. The ground here has moved before. It will move again. The edge of the plate is never still. You stand in the present, but you are wrapped in echoes. Your thoughts turn to the Pacific Northwest, where the Juan de Fuca plate dives beneath North America. It is a small plate, fragile in the face of giants, yet still it plays its part. Beneath Washington and Oregon, pressure builds like a breath held too long. One day, it will release, not in anger, but in inevitability. Even silence has limits, even stillness carries strain. And then you find yourself in Indonesia, a country born from subduction. You see island arcs curving like smoke across the sea, Java, Sumatra, Sulawesi. Each island is a mark of fire risen from the deep. Each volcano is a scar of rebirth. The Sunda Trench hums with the memory of past tsunamis, the weight of ancient earthquakes. The plates meet here, not with gentleness, but with purpose. Beneath their friction, life blooms. Fertile soils, towering forests, spices and rivers and story. You wonder what it means that so much creation comes from descent, that the most beautiful landscapes are shaped by what falls. The quiet lesson of subduction is this, that loss feeds the world, that to be drawn downward is not to be erased, it is to become something new. The ocean floor you saw birthed at the ridge is now ash and crystal, layered into mountain roots and volcanic arcs. You think of this recycling, this earth that wastes nothing, that folds its past into its future. There is no end here, only change. And yet, even this cycle has its mysteries. Not all descending plates melt completely. Some plunge deep into the mantle and vanish from easy observation. In mineral clues, in the way the earth quivers when no one is looking. Scientists trace these slabs like ancient runes, trying to decipher the story of a planet always in motion. You float now in a vast chamber of molten rock, where parts of old ocean crust mix with fresh mantle. It is a place of strange chemistry and deep pressure. Here, the rock is neither solid nor liquid. It is something in between, like thought before it becomes word. In this in-between, elements bond and break, forming the building blocks of tomorrow's continents. Even here, in the deepest quiet, the earth is writing. You rise slowly, carried upward by heat, but your thoughts linger in the trench, in that place where the planet bows to gravity. Subduction is not a single event, you realize. It is a symphony in slow motion. Each movement changes the next. Each descent lifts something else. Think of the ocean again, of how its floor is not eternal. It is made to return. The weight of water, the press of sediment, the journey back into fire, all of it part of the earth's breath. You imagine the sea not as a void, but as a veil. Beneath it, the real work goes on. You close your eyes once more. You feel the downward pull ease into stillness. The crust has descended. The trench has closed above it. But the motion continues, unseen. And now, from this place of pressure and patience, you feel something rise again, not rock this time, but stone made light. Not collapse, but uplift. Not fall, but flight. You sense mountains stirring far above, born from this descent. The earth is folding upward now. It is time to follow the rising. But that is a dream for another night. You think of the ocean again, of how its floor is not eternal. It is made to return. The weight of water, the press of sediment, the journey back into fire, all of it part of the earth's breath. You imagine the sea not as a void, but as a veil. Beneath it, the real work goes on. You close your eyes once more. You feel the downward pull ease into stillness. The crust has descended. The trench has closed above it. But the motion continues, unseen. And now, from this place of pressure and patience, you feel something rise again. Not rock this time, but stone made light. Not collapse, but uplift. Not fall, but flight. You sense mountains stirring far above, born from this descent. The earth is folding upward now. It is time to follow the rising. You drift upward, slowly, drawn not by heat now, but by compression. From the deep furnace of subduction, you emerge, pulled toward a different kind of transformation. No longer does one plate slip beneath another. In silence, here they meet face to face. Here they collide. The ocean is behind you now. You are surrounded by stone, dry and lifted high. The sky feels closer. The wind tastes thinner. This is the realm of mountains. The Himalayas rise Around you, like a frozen wave, caught mid-crash. You feel the weight of them before you see their full height. Each peak carries the memory of continents colliding. India pushes into Asia still, inch by inch, as it has for tens of millions of years. You sense the force, not fast, not loud, but immense. The Earth's crust folds and thickens here, as if the planet is trying to lift thought into form. Pushing stone toward the sun, you touch the face of a rock near the base of Everest. It is ancient seafloor, once buried beneath an ocean, now resting in the sky. Shells turned to limestone, lifted above the clouds. You imagine the pressure that moved it, the slow, grinding dance of lithospheric plates, locked in embrace, neither willing to yield. In their stalemate, they rise. This is no gentle meeting. This is resistance made visible. Beneath your feet, the crust thickens like dough pressed from both sides. It does not slide. It stacks. Faults crisscross the base of the mountains like wrinkles in paper too long folded. Rocks buckle, break, and are restitched by time. Some layers stretch upward into towering peaks. Others sink downward to become the deep roots of ranges. The mountain is only half visible. Its true height includes all that lies below. You drift through the Tibetan plateau, the rooftop of the world. It is not just high. It is vast, an uplifted plain, born not from one collision, but from the long, grinding persistence of many. Here, rivers begin their journeys. Here, the sky opens wider. You feel the pressure still, not gone, but dispersed, flowing through fault zones and deep quakes that pulse beneath the silence. Your dream body floats further west, to where the Alps bend Europe. The African plate presses northward, sculpting ridges and valleys with every breath of movement. You see the Matterhorn, its jagged edges a monument to the force that shaped it. Beneath the tourist paths and winter snows, ancient rocks hold memories of continental drift, of oceans closed and mountains born. Each layer tells a pressure of time, of a world forever rearranging itself. You wonder how the earth can hold so much force, yet speak so softly. A quake might last seconds, but the buildup takes centuries. A peak might stand for millennia, but it was born in the crush of moments beyond human time. Even now, the plates beneath you do not rest. They press, they push, they carry the future. In their friction, you find yourself now above the Zagros Mountains of Iran, where Arabia collides with Eurasia. The landscape is not as high, but it ripples with strain. Folds run like knuckles through the desert, where oil seeps gather and faults whisper of coming tremors. This is not just geology. This is history. Empires have risen and fallen on this restless ground. The land carries the story in its bones. You pass over the Caucasus, over the Carpathians, over the Anatolian fault zones that slice through Turkey like old scars. Each one is a product of pressure, a map of resistance. Some faults slip sideways, some compress, some stretch. But all are part of the same puzzle. The Earth is not static. It reshapes its own face with every slow collision. Your thoughts drift. Now to the Andes, once more. But this time, your attention is not on subduction alone. Here, the mountains rise from both the push below and the squeeze from the sides. Continental crust behaves differently than oceanic. It resists subduction, and so it crumples. In the Andes, the crust has doubled in thickness. You feel the weight of it, the heat trapped beneath. Volcanoes pierce the surface, but deeper down. It is pressure that does the sculpting. You wonder how something so solid can fold like fabric, but rock, given enough time, becomes soft. Even the hardest granite bends under eons of force. The Himalayas are still rising. The Alps are still shifting. Nothing in the mountains is finished. You walk through valleys that once were seafloors, touch stones that once were molten, breathe air that once moved through forests long buried. Time is not a straight line here. It is a spiral of uplift. You sit on a high ridge now, watching. Clouds move beneath you. It is silent, but not still. The earth is thinking in deep time. You feel the tension beneath the peace. You remember that mountains are born not only from collision, but from the refusal to break. In every uplifted ridge, there is defiance. In every peak, a memory of being pressed. Your dream slides south, toward New Zealand. The Australian plate meets the Pacific here too, and the collision is complicated. Some parts subduct, some twist, some rise. The southern Alps stretch along the island like a spine. You follow the Alpine fault, feeling the tension like a thread pulled too tight. In a place so beautiful, you feel the undercurrent of strain. Mountains do not rise without cost. You remember that human lives are short compared to this rhythm. We build cities in the pause between movements. We tell stories on the slopes of ranges still forming. But the mountains do not pause. They only seem to. Their patience is deeper than our calendars. Their growth is measured in breathless millimeters, in whispers of granite and quartz. You walk now along a ridge where two continents once collided and became one. The Appalachian Mountains, old and worn, stretch beneath your feet. They no longer rise as fiercely as the Himalayas, but they were born in the same fire. Long ago, Africa met North America, and the collision raised peaks as high as any today. Time has softened them, eroded their edges, let forests take root in their cracks. But the memory remains folded into stone. You marvel at how the earth remembers everything. Even in places where the mountains are gone, the rocks beneath still carry the folds. Even in plains, the crust keeps the signature of ancient collisions. The planet is a living palimpsest, rewriting itself without ever fully erasing. You float back toward the present now, toward ranges still rising. You stand once more at the base of the Himalayas. The wind is sharp. The stars feel closer. Beneath you, India continues to press into Asia. The crust thickens. The mountains grow. You feel it all in silence, in stillness, in the weight of your breath. Each stone you touch is a story. Each ridge is a sentence. The mountain is a book of pressure. Its pages written in quartz and slate. You close your eyes. You imagine what lies beneath. The crust folding upon itself, layers pushed skyward by the long hand of time. You imagine what will come, new quakes, new ridges, new lines etched in the sky. Nothing ends. The earth only rises and rearranges. Even what falls will one day climb again. And as you stand high above the sea, where ancient shales now dream in stone, you realize something. Mountains are not made by rising alone. They are shaped by refusal, by pressure, by time that does not relent. The sky does not pull them up. The earth pushes them there. It is the slow collision, the unwilling surrender, the quiet war of plates that builds beauty. You breathe in the thin air. You feel the pull below and the press from all sides. You are part of this motion too. Your bones carry minerals once buried in old oceans. Your body is folded from the same dust that makes mountains. You are not separate from this rising. You are a ridge yourself, caught in the slow uplift of becoming. You sit in the hush between quakes. You feel the mountain hold its breath, and you know that even here, at the top of the world, the story is still unfolding. You listen to the silence. It is full of motion. You reach out, and the sky touches your fingers. But even this height is not the end. Asterisk, asterisk. You rest a while longer in the sky's breath. The thin air swirling gently around you, quiet as memory. But the mountain beneath you, once forged by collision, begins to soften beneath your thoughts. The stillness begins to stretch. You feel it, not as peace, but as a subtle pulling, a tension just under the surface, not compression this time, but release. You are being drawn now, not into the press of plates, but into their parting. You close your eyes and feel the earth shift again, but this time it does not rise. It opens. You find yourself descending slowly into a land shaped not by uplift, but by separation. The sky is lower now, but the air is thick with heat and story. Beneath your feet, the ground is changing, not by forceful collision, but by quiet divergence. You are walking into the great Rift Valley, the cradle of continents stretching apart. Here, the earth does not crash into itself. It pulls itself open. It breathes out through long scars in stone, through faults and fissures. Through the patient language of rifting, the land here trembles, but not with the pressure of mountain building. Instead, it hums with the slow ache of parting. The African plate is tearing itself in two. On one side, the Nubian plate, on the other, the Somali plate. Between them, the rift opens like a wound that never bleeds, only deepens. You walk along this silent fracture where the earth is learning to let go. And beneath each step, you feel the quiet promise of oceans yet to come. You imagine the continent splitting not with a roar, but with a whisper stretched over millions of years. This is not destruction, it is transformation. A continent does not break apart out of rage. It unravels in response to heat, to time, to the deep restlessness within. You look around and see cracks in the ground, lakes gathered in the rifts, volcanoes rising like punctuation marks on a sentence still being written. This is not a place of endings. It is the beginning of a new shape. The East African rift is a scar, yes, but also a seed. From Ethiopia to Mozambique, the land is changing one day. Tens of millions of years from now, the sea will enter this low valley. The Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden may flood in, and a new ocean will stretch where highlands now stand. But for now, it is all motion without noise. The crust thins, magma rises, valleys sink, volcanoes breathe. You pass Mount Kilimanjaro, standing alone against the sky, born not from collision, but from this gentle rending. You walk beside Lake Tanganyika, deep and narrow, held between rift shoulders. It is one of the oldest and deepest lakes on earth, a memory of what oceans may become. And farther south, Lake Malawi cradles another piece of the earth's intention, a long blue mirror stretched along a fracture line. You think about how this rift is not sudden. It moves at the pace of fingernails, growing slow, persistent, unstoppable, and yet that tiny motion reshapes everything. Over time, it rearranges coastlines, births new seas, redraws the map. The earth does not need speed to make change. It only needs time and intention. You kneel by the edge of a hot spring in the Afar Triangle, where the crust is so thin that heat spills through. This is where three tectonic plates meet: the African, the Arabian, and the Indian, pulling away from each other in a slow motion. Bloom. The ground here is young, freshly formed from volcanic flows. The colors dazzle: sulfur yellows, mineral blues, rusted reds. Even in separation, there is beauty. Even in division, the earth makes art. You watch as steam rises from the cracks, geysers hiss. The rocks beneath your hands are still warm from the planet's breath. It feels alive in a different way here, not through growth or pressure, but through unraveling. You begin to understand that tectonic motion isn't always a force that brings things together. Sometimes it is a letting go. You pass nomads and acacia trees, giraffes stepping carefully across fractured ground. Life adapts. Life always adapts. The rift has not broken the rhythm of the savannas. It has only reshaped their dance. In this land of lions and elephants and fire. Change is not feared, it is lived. And beneath every hoofprint, the earth continues its long stretch. You think of the people who walked here long ago. This is where some of the earliest human ancestors left their footprints in volcanic ash, fragile impressions that outlived the feet that made them. In the rift, you are walking not only through geology, but through memory. The split in the earth is also a chapter in your own story. You reach a cliff and look out across the valley. It is wide, sunlit, and deeply silent. The horizon rolls in layers: basalt, ash, ancient lava fields, each one telling of eruptions long gone. But the silence is not empty. It is full of what's to come. You feel the earth leaning forward into its next shape, and you with it. You learn that not all rifts succeed. Some begin to pull apart, but then stop, frozen by shifting forces. These are called failed rifts, like the mid-continent rift in North America. It tried to become an ocean, but never did. And yet, its echo remains, a crescent scar beneath the surface, a memory of intent. Even failure leaves a mark. Even aborted beginnings shape the world. You wonder what makes a rift complete. What quiet choice tips the balance toward ocean or silence? You realize the earth doesn't decide quickly. It waits. It tries. It begins. It stretches until the crust cannot hold. And only then, only after patience and persistence, does the water arrive. First in lakes, then in rivers, then in a sea, and finally in the slow salt breath of ocean. You walk now along a new fissure, freshly torn by a recent quake. The air smells of dust and sulfur. The crack is narrow, but deep. You crouch beside it and listen. There is no sound, yet you feel motion beneath the silence, a slow unraveling, like thread pulled from fabric. The continent is being remade, not from the outside in, but from within itself. You rise and move east, where the Red Sea yawns wide, itself a rift becoming ocean. Its floor spreads slowly, filled with new crust from the deep. Here, the parting is more complete. Africa and Arabia drift away from each other, quietly, inevitably. The boundary between them grows salty and deep. And in this deepening, you sense the earth exhaling. You follow the rift as it curves north into the Dead Sea, another depression formed by tectonic stretch. Even deserts bear the marks of movement. Even salt remembers the sea it once held. It has worn. It carries them forward, one fracture at a time. You close your eyes and picture the future. The African continent split along the rift. A new ocean, wide and blue, cutting through what was once a single landmass. Islands formed from volcanic peaks, coasts realigned. The world reshaped, but still turning, still breathing. The rift is not an end. It is a becoming. You lie down on the warm rock and feel the earth shifting beneath you. The crack is not wide enough to swallow yet, but it will be in 1,000 lifetimes. This place will host tides. You imagine ships sailing where now there is dust. You imagine coral where now there are shrubs. You imagine children born on the shores of a sea that today is only dream. You understand now, even splitting is sacred. Even the breaking of a continent is part of the earth's rhythm. Rifting is not destruction. It is renewal, seen from a longer view. A view wide enough to see past the pain of separation, into the grace of what grows from it. You sit beside a fig tree rooted in fractured ground. Its roots find depth where stone has pulled apart. It grows taller because of the break. You touch the bark and feel the message it carries. That division can make space. That parting can make room. That the earth must open before it can welcome something new. And as you listen to the wind in the branches, you realize that the next chapter of this journey does not begin with stone. It begins with water. Something stirs beneath the rift, something fluid and ancient. You feel it rise, slow and deep, like a breath preparing to speak. But that is a dream for another night. Asterisk, asterisk, you wake beneath the fig tree, where roots drink from the cracked earth and leaves whisper above you in the soft light. The wind has shifted. The silence of the rift has given way to something warmer, a hum, low and slow, rising from deep below. You do not hear it with your ears. You feel it in your bones. It is a vibration, a pulse, a breath drawn from beneath the crust. The earth is preparing to speak, not in words, but in fire. You stand slowly, brushing dust from your skin, and look to the horizon. The land ripples and lifts in places. A single plume curls upward in the distance, pale, smoky, almost shy. But you recognize it now for what it is, the beginning of a volcano. Where once the crust opened in silence, now it opens in flame. Lava will follow. The world is about to change again. You walk toward the breath of the mountain. Each step feels heavier, not from fatigue, but from gravity's memory. Beneath your feet, the earth stores heat and pressure like unshed emotion. It holds it close, building it slowly until release becomes inevitable. This is not an outburst. This is expression. A volcano is the earth's way of feeling aloud. It is the rising of what has been hidden. It is confession in molten form. You reach the base of the mountain just as the ground warms subtly beneath you. This is not fear. This is awe. You have come to the place where fire meets air, where pressure becomes presence. The volcano does not shout. It exhales. A breath made of stone, vapor, ash, and something older than language. You sit and watch. The sky darken, not with night, but with ash. The eruption has begun. Lava flows, like slow thought, down the slope. It glows with the intensity of memory and the weight of change. You see, trees yield to it, homes vanish before it, but even in destruction, there is strange beauty. The lava carries minerals that will one day feed fields. The ash will settle and make the soil rich. What burns now will bloom later. You feel the heat on your face. It is not cruel. It is cleansing. The earth does not destroy to punish. It transforms to renew. Every eruption clears a space, makes room for the next cycle, the next breath. And you begin to understand that volcanoes are not wounds, they are openings, portals between what lies below and what can rise above. You close your eyes and drift into memory. You remember the subduction zones, the trenches where old crust sank back into the mantle. You recall how the plates collided to lift the Himalayas. You trace the path back to the mid-ocean ridges where new crust was born. And now you see how all those motions feed into this one moment, this molten exhale. Plates move, crust bends, heat rises, and the volcano breathes. You walk through a field of cooled lava, black and jagged, still warm in places. Steam curls from cracks, like ghosts releasing final sighs. Life will return here, you know. Ferns will push through the cracks. Birds will nest again. Insects will return, and with them, the entire orchestra of renewal. It takes time, it takes patience, but the earth knows how to begin again. You follow the lava back to its source, imagining its path below. Miles down, in the mantle, rocks melt and mingle. Pressure builds in chambers that pulse like slow hearts. The magma does not rush. It rises when ready. It follows fractures, feeds on weakness, and finds the surface in its own time. You admire this patience, this refusal to be hurried. You pause by a fumarole, a vent exhaling steam and sulfur. The scent is sharp, but clean in its own way, like truth laid bare. This is the breath between eruptions. Not silence, but whisper. Not calm, but readiness. You sit beside it and listen, feeling the earth's warmth beneath you like a blanket, folded in fire. You travel now to Iceland, where fire and ice dance together. The mid-Atlantic ridge cuts through the island, and volcanoes line its spine like vertebrae. Here, eruptions are both frequent and expected. The people live not in fear, but in rhythm. They build homes on cooled lava. They heat water with geothermal wells. They tell stories of fire spirits and frost giants, not to explain the science away, but to live alongside it. You walk across the lava plains of Hawaii, where new land is still being born. The ocean hisses as molten rock meets salt water. A coastline grows before your eyes. You kneel and touch the fresh stone, still hot, still changing. You feel the story of Earth here, always becoming, never finished. You think of the people who live near volcanoes, the risk they accept, the soil they cherish, the cycles they respect. In Java and Vesuvius, in Etna and Nyiragongo, entire communities live with the breath of Earth beneath them. They plant, they harvest, they rebuild. They do not curse the volcano. They understand its language. You return in thought to Mount St. Helens, where the summit once stood high before it shattered in a single violent breath. Ash covered the sky. Forests fell. But now, decades later, life has returned. Lupins bloom where lava once rolled, wander across the slopes. Even the shattered peak has begun to regrow. You realize that recovery is not a reversal. It is a new song made from old notes. You descend into a caldera, the wide mouth of a collapsed volcano. It feels like standing in the Earth's open eye. The walls rise around you like the memory of an exhale. You feel the hush here, not absence, but rest. This volcano is not dead. It is dreaming. And in that dream, something ancient turns over, preparing to rise again. You think of magma as emotion, slow, dense, impossible to contain forever. The Earth carries it quietly until it must speak. When it erupts, the world changes shape, and just as quickly, the fire retreats, slipping back into the depths to wait again. This cycle is not random. It is necessary. Without release, the crust would buckle. Without eruption, the planet could not breathe. You stand on the rim of a volcano in the Galapagos. Around you, the land is raw and young. You watch the sunset tint the smoke with gold. You feel the heat behind you, the cool wind before you, and you exist in the balance between them. You understand now that volcanoes are the heartbeats of continents. Not constant, but vital. You imagine the Earth as a living body. The mantle is its muscle, the crust its skin, the volcanoes its lungs. And with each eruption, it exhales something it could not keep inside. Sometimes, the breath is gentle, a lava fountain under moonlight. Other times, it is a cry, a pyroclastic surge through forest and town. But always, it is a message. I am alive. I am changing. You turn toward the ocean. Beneath the waves, volcanoes rise, unseen. Most of the Earth's volcanic activity happens here, in the silence of the seafloor. New crust spreads quietly. New islands begin as whispers. You float in thought above these submerged fires, feeling the pulse of heat below. And then you rise. Again, not in flame, but in understanding. You have seen what burns and what blooms. You have watched stone become liquid and liquid become land. You know now that fire is not the opposite of life. It is one of its sources you walk away from. The volcano, the ground, still warm beneath your steps. Behind you, the plume rises slowly into the darkening sky. Ahead, something stirs on the edge of vision. A glimmer, a glow, a breath drawn differently. You feel it in the air. Subtle but insistent. Water is coming, but that is a dream for another night. Asterisk, asterisk, you wake to a hush, so complete it hums. The volcano lies behind you, quiet now, but the heat lingers in the soles of your feet. The ground still carries the memory of its fire, but something new is stirring. You feel it before you name it. A tension, a tightening, like a breath drawn and held for too long. The earth is not resting. It is holding something in. You walk across a plain cracked with time. The wind brushes low, as if wary to make too much noise. Beneath your steps, the crust is not still. It shifts in slow murmurs and sudden gasps. You pause. There it is again, a faint shiver, as though the land itself has flinched. Land, in that small motion, you sense the beginning of something vast. Earthquakes do not start with shaking. They begin in silence. Deep beneath the surface, plates press and grind. Not in sudden violence, but in patient resistance. For years, even centuries, stress builds between stone that does not wish to move. Locked together, the rocks resist. But nothing can resist forever. You know this. You sit upon a ledge above an ancient fault line. The rocks around you are scarred with memory, layers twisted like pages bent by wind. You run your fingers across their surface. Here is a wrinkle where two pieces of earth once tore apart. There, a jagged seam where they slammed back together. The marks are not random. They are stories. You listen. Each quake is a sentence in this language of stress and release. You imagine the crust as skin stretched too tightly. Beneath it, the muscles of the planet tremble, waiting for relief. And when it comes, it does not whisper. It roars. The moment of rupture arrives, not with warning, but with certainty. It is sudden, but never without cause. The plates shift. A fault slips. Energy long held bursts, free in waves you cannot see but feel. The surface jolts, not because the earth is angry, but because it can no longer hold its breath. You feel that moment in your bones. It is not just a sound or emotion, but a kind of awakening. The ground beneath you heaves like a living thing. It is not a passive platform. It is part of the rhythm. And now, you are part of it too. The shaking ends quickly, but its echo stretches. Long, buildings may fall, cliffs may crumble, rivers may shift their paths. But long after the dust has settled, the earth remembers. Faults are like scars that never fully heal. They twitch when storms pass. They murmur under the weight of mountains. They breathe. You travel now through a valley shaped not by water or wind, but by quakes. The land is torn, stepped like stairs of stone. Each drop marks a moment the earth reshaped itself. You descend carefully, each step a reminder of how easily firmness can falter. In the distance, a city hums quietly. You imagine its people sleeping, working, loving, unaware, perhaps, of the web of fault beneath them. But the earth does not forget. Its pulse runs beneath every foundation. Engineers study it, geologists map it, and still, it surprises. You pass a school where children once practiced earthquake drills, under desks, hands over heads. Small rituals against a force too large to stop. You remember doing this, too, once. The strange mix of fear and routine. The idea that preparation could mean safety. Sometimes it does, but often the earth moves faster than our plans. Still, we learn. With every quake, the story grows clearer. Sensors placed deep in boreholes record the faintest whispers. GPS satellites track how continents lean and stretch. Slow quakes, silent slips, creeping faults, each a clue to the dance beneath. You find comfort in this. Even in chaos, there is pattern. You meet a woman who grew up beside a fault line. She speaks of tremors like weather. There was a small one last spring, she says, enough to rattle the glasses. Her voice is calm, not because she does not respect the danger, but because she has learned to live with it. The earth moves. So do we. In her garden, you see tomato vines twisting around steel trellises designed to sway. The architecture here bends rather than breaks. Buildings rise on shock absorbers. Roads flex at the seams. It is not weakness to move with the earth. It is wisdom. You sit beneath a fig tree again, its roots deep in fractured ground. The same kind of tree you saw near the rift. Its branches sway with a breeze. You realize that the earth's breaks make room not only for danger, but for life. In the cracks, things grow. In the aftershocks, people rebuild. You think of liquefaction, a strange word, soft on the tongue. It means that solid ground can become like liquid when shaken. Sand behaves like water. Buildings sink. Streets ripple. You wonder what it means for something to be solid. You begin to understand. Stability is not a promise. It is a balance. You cross a bridge designed to survive the sway. Beneath you, a river winds through an old quake valley. The water does not mind the shape. It fills what opens, smooths what breaks, remembers none of it as disaster. You envy that asterisk, you lie on the bare earth, feeling for its breath. It comes not as a steady beat, but as a cycle. Pressure, tension, release, not unlike your own. You realize that your body, too, holds tension. Stress you carry in shoulders, in jaw, in quiet places you forget to notice. But sometimes it is a relief. You begin to hear the earth's quakes differently, not as violence, but as necessity, a reset. The only way to move forward when stillness becomes too heavy. Like tears after holding them too long. Through silence, like breath. Some quakes come with no warning. Others send signs. A swarm of small tremors, a change in groundwater flow, animals moving oddly. But even then, we cannot always predict the moment. The earth guards its secrets. And maybe that is kindness. Not knowing keeps us attentive, present. You walk along a path where fault meets fault, where tectonic plates kiss in tension. You press your hand to the rock. It is warm. It is old. It is waiting. You imagine the next quake, not with fear, but with understanding. It will come. And after it, something will change. You remember the stories of past quakes, the cities shaken, the lives upturned, the innovations born from loss. Seismic codes revised, early warning systems refined, human kindness rediscovered in the rubble. From each pulse, something awakens. You sit beside a seismograph, its needle tracing silence into paper. The line wavers slightly. Perhaps a dog barked. Perhaps a breeze stirred a tree. Perhaps, deep below, a plate shifted just a hair. The machine listens always. So do you. And now you feel it. A quiet shudder beneath your feet, barely there, a whisper of the next story. You smile. It is not fear. It is awe. You are living on a planet that moves, a planet with a pulse. The night deepens. Stars wheel overhead, distant and steady. The earth, by contrast, is restless. But you are not afraid. You lie back, hands on the ground, and let it hold you. The tremors pass like dreams. With the rhythm now, you understand. Earthquakes are not mistakes. They are the earth correcting itself, releasing what must be let go. And from that release, space opens again. For rebuilding, for growing, for resting. You feel the silence again, not empty, but full of potential. The ground is still for now, but you know it remembers. And you know this stillness is not the end. You think of something deeper than rock, something fluid and older. Then fire. The ground may shake, but beneath it flows something steadier. Not molten this time, but something cooler. You feel it in your mind like a stream winding through thought. It is not fracture, it is water, but that is a dream for another night. Asterisk, you begin in the hush that follows, trembling. The earth has settled, for now. But even in stillness, there is motion. You feel it not as a quake or a crack, but as something slower, a drifting, a deep, deliberate shifting. The kind of movement that doesn't need to shout. It simply continues. Like a breath you forgot you were holding, released over eons. You walk through a quiet desert where the sand feels ancient, as though it remembers a time when this place was not dry at all, but cradled by a warm, shallow sea. You kneel and press your fingers into the sediment. Hidden in the grains are the remains of creatures long gone, once swimming between shores that no longer touch, and you realize the land you walk upon has traveled, not just through time, but across the very face of the planet. You close your eyes and picture it, all the continents pressed together in a single, massive cradle, Pangea. The Earth holding its lands in one broad embrace. No Atlantic Ocean, no distant continents separated by salt and wave. Just one great, rumpled body of stone, wrapped in ancient forests and folded mountains. But nothing in nature stays still forever. Even unity is temporary. You feel the slow tear of time. You imagine the mantle beneath growing restless, currents of rock flowing like honey, pushing gently but persistently. Cracks begin to form, like lines in a once whole shell. A rift opens, tentative at first, then decisive. Land that was once side by side begins to drift. Not in anger, not in haste, just in the natural rhythm of change. Africa begins to pull away from South America, like pages in a book turning in different directions. You watch them go, trailing whispers of their past closeness in the fit of their coastlines. Like puzzle pieces softened by distance, they still remember. India moves too. Not leisurely, but with purpose, as if summoned. You follow its path northward, feel its weight glide over the mantle. A continent adrift, it sails toward Asia like a ship bound for a collision. Millions of years pass in this single motion. Then the crash, slow, inevitable. The Himalayas are born from that meeting. Lifted skyward by the force of arrival, you walk beside these mountains now, understanding their roots lie not in the sky, but in ancient oceans and moving plates. The peaks are monuments to motion, not just upward, but across. You think of the energy it took for land to journey so far, to carry forests and rivers and the seeds of entire ecosystems across a changing world. You sit beside a boulder high in the Andes and place your palm against its rough surface. It is not from here, not originally. It has migrated, lifted, and shaped by the grand, slow drift. You feel its story, not in words, but in temperature, in texture, in silence. It remembers Pangea. It remembers the parting. Even now, the continents are not still. They drift centimeters each year, slower than your fingernails grow. But this pace is not insignificant. Over millions of years, those centimeters shape oceans, raise islands, open rifts. You imagine the future Earth, a new supercontinent, perhaps. Still unborn, the present arrangement is not final. Nothing on this planet is. You wade into a shallow bay where continents once kissed. The water carries whispers from both shores. On one side, the African plate hums beneath your feet. On the other, the Eurasian plate waits, listening. You are between them, in a space made not by conflict, but by the simple need to move. You think of drift not as a loss, but as exploration. Land doesn't abandon, it searches, it wanders, it transforms. And with each movement, it writes a new chapter in the story of life. Birds migrate, not just across continents, but because of them. Ocean currents shift as coastlines move. Climate dances in response. Life adapts, carried by stone ships on a slow, invisible sea. You trace the mid-Atlantic ridge in your thoughts, a seam running down the center of the ocean like a scar and a promise. Here, new crust is born. The earth is not just breaking, it is creating. You feel the plates gently parting, allowing molten rock to rise and harden, forming the floor beneath waves. The continents are passengers, carried on these restless plates. You think of the crust not as stable, but as rafts drifting on a deep, churning ocean of heat. The mantle below flows, not like water, but like something between solid and liquid, heavy with purpose. Convection currents stir in its depths, looping endlessly, pushing from beneath, pulling at the edges. This is the engine of drift. Silent, slow, unstoppable, you walk across Iceland, where the mid-Atlantic ridge breaks the surface. Here, the earth opens itself. New land forms even as it moves. Volcanoes whisper of what lies below. Steam rises from fissures like breath from sleeping giants. You kneel and touch the ground. It is warm, alive, becoming. Asterisk, and you realize the continents are not broken. They are in motion. Separation is not always rupture. It is sometimes rhythm. A dance older than memory. You sit beneath a banyan tree on Madagascar, watching lemurs leap through low branches. This island, too, was once part of something larger, a piece of Gondwana, the southern supercontinent. Now it drifts alone, yet full of life, unique and wondrous. Isolation did not empty it, it enriched it. You listen to the wind carry pollen from tree to tree. You watch waves shape new coastline. You feel the earth turning beneath you, not in a spin, but in a deeper way. A tectonic breath, slow and certain. You think of people as part of this drift. Our ancestors crossed land bridges that no longer exist, moved with the plates without knowing. Culture, language, and story spread, not just through time, but through geography that never stood still. The movement of land shaped the movement of lives. You remember standing in the Rift Valley, where walking upright began. Perhaps we learned to walk because the earth itself was walking, stretching, splitting, creating landscapes that required a new way of being. We became mobile because the world around us was. You look up at a map of the world, not as borders and names, but as living memory. Every edge of every continent speaks of motion. Nothing fits perfectly anymore, but the echoes are still there. The curves of South America and Africa still whisper of closeness. The islands, scattered across the Pacific, still trace the ghost trails of ancient drifts. You press your ear to the ground. You don't hear footsteps, you hear flow. The land does not stump or stomp away. It slides, gently, with persistence. Tectonic plates don't argue. They navigate, and so do you. You have been part of this journey all along. Your bones made of minerals that were once ocean floor. Your cells shaped by climates formed by drifting land. You, too, are an island, set adrift, a fragment of something once whole, still whole in its becoming. You feel peace in the motion now. No longer fearing separation, you recognize it as transformation. The earth is not breaking, it is composing, and as you lie down on a rock that once rested beneath another sky, you breathe with the rhythm of the drifting world. You imagine the future shapes to come, the continents of tomorrow, unrecognizable but beautiful. And you wonder what stories they will carry. You close your eyes. You float on the surface of time, and from somewhere deep within, you sense the quiet touch of rising tides. Water again. Not as threat, but as witness. But that is a dream for another night. Asterisk, you wake with your back against stone, warmed by a sun that has passed over these ridges for millions of years. The rock beneath you is rough, weathered, a canvas written upon by time. You press your palm to it, feeling its grain like the lines of a memory, too old for words. This is not just stone. It is a story, compressed and curled in layers. Each one a chapter of the earth's long and silent telling. You sit up slowly, brushing dust from your fingers. Around you, the world feels still, but the stillness is an illusion. Beneath this moment, time is moving, not with haste, but with patience. The patience of mountains rising, of rivers carving, of oceans filling and retreating again. You begin to see the folds in the cliffside, a head knot, random, but deliberate, like the spine of a book opening to reveal what came before. Each fold is a wave of pressure remembered. Each tilt and twist is a scar of ancient stress, now made beautiful. You walk the trail that curls between strata. Bands of color run across the rock. Face rust, red ochre, pale sand, gray. Sediment laid down over eons, layer like the turning pages of a journal, too vast to hold in a single glance. These are the sediments of vanished seas, of long-forgotten forests, of deserts that once bloomed and glaciers that once swallowed the sky. You read them with your eyes, but also with something deeper, body recognizing the tempo of time. You pause before a stone ledge where fossils press up from the surface. Like punctuation in a paragraph, a fern frond, delicately etched, a spiral shell, perfect in its ancient geometry. Creatures once alive, now held in the stillness of mineral. They do not speak, and yet they tell you everything. That life has always changed. That extinction is not an ending, but a turning. That stone remembers where memory fails. You think of the planet not as a sphere, but as a scroll slowly unrolling, plate by plate, layer by layer, fault by fault. And in each fold, the earth has tucked a whisper of its own becoming. You step over a fracture in the ground, a fault line made quiet by time. It has healed, but the memory of the break is still. They're visible, permanent, honest. You kneel beside it, running your fingers along the seam, and wonder how many such fractures lie beneath your own life. Not wounds, but records. Not endings, but entrances. The sun shifts, lighting a ridge high above. There, a limestone cliff gleams white against the blue. You know it was once a seabed, resting under warm, shallow waters where coral bloomed. That water is long gone, evaporated or shifted away. But the life it held remains, preserved in calcium and compression. The reef became rock. The sea became mountain. What once swayed with tides now stands silent, shouldering the wind. You breathe in the air and taste the ghost of salt. Each step you take is across something once buried. You descend into a canyon, its walls etched with history. You see the gentle arch of a fold in the rock, like a slow breath drawn and held. This is not just erosion. This is storytelling. The earth reshapes itself, not in haste, but in remembrance. It holds onto every pressure, every bend, every shift, and makes of them something permanent. You pause where the canyon narrows. The light thins here, filtered through time. The silence deepens, not because there is nothing to hear, but because the sound has slowed into stillness. You place your ear to the stone wall. You do not hear words. You hear rhythms, slow, patient pulses of change, the heartbeat of mountains, the breath of basins, the steady murmur of countenance thinking. You feel small here, but not lost. Instead, you feel placed, as if the earth has always been expecting you, waiting for this moment when you would notice it speaking. Not in thunder, but in texture. Not in flame, but in form. You lean your forehead against the rock and close your eyes. Behind your lids, you see oceans flowing in and out, deserts wandering like thoughts, forests flickering across ages. Time moves in circles. You realize the same minerals that once fed algae now glint in quartz veins. The same pressures that closed an ancient trench have lifted these mountains. The same basalt that once flowed as lava now cradles roots of new forests. Nothing is ever lost. It's only transformed, compressed, rewritten. You find a stone cracked neatly in half, its inner surface gleaming with a crystal that took thousands of years to grow. You hold it gently, as if it might speak, and in a way it does, not in language, but in presence. This is what patience becomes. This is what slowness makes dot above you. Birds fly between outcrops, nesting in niches carved by wind. Their calls echo lightly, and you realize how recent their song is in this timeline. The birds are fleeting. The cliffs are ancient. But still, they meet. Still, they share the same sky. You wonder how many other meetings like this happen every day, moments where the temporary touches the eternal. You reach a ridge where the ground curves upward, bent by pressures long spent. You remember the word anticline, a wrinkle in the earth made by uplift. Not an accident, but a memory encoded in stone. You sit on the high point and watch the land stretch around you, hills and valleys shaped not by sudden force, but by the persistence of time. You run your hand over the ridgeline. It is warm, alive, in a way only ancient things can be. In your pocket, you carry a small stone picked up hours ago. You take it out and examine its surface, smooth, dappled with mineral, slightly curved. It has traveled too, worn down from something larger, older. You wonder how far it has come, how long it was held in rivers, crushed in glaciers, rolled by wind. It is a piece of the earth's memory, small enough to hold, vast enough to humble. You descend again, the path taking you through layers that feel like epochs. You begin to notice the subtle differences, grain size, angle, texture. Each change is a decision made by time. Not one moment, but many. Not one storm, but seasons upon seasons. You reach a ledge where ripple marks are etched into the rock, evidence of waves from a sea that no longer exists. The surface holds the memory of water, long gone, but not forgotten. You think of how much the earth has seen, and how little it insists upon being known. It does not shout its history, it whispers it in grains. It traces it in folds. It offers pieces, not proofs. And you, walking through it, are invited not to solve it, but to listen. You pause by a cliff where iron has stained the stone red. You press your palm against it, and it feels like warmth from another age. These are oxidation layers, evidence of ancient oxygen, the breath of early life etched in rock. You realize that even the air has left its trace upon the ground. You wonder what the present is writing now. You walk on, feeling the quiet weight of understanding settle gently. There is no hurry here. Time does not demand speed. It offers presence. The earth has always taken its time, building, folding, breaking, reforming. And every part of it is in conversation with the past. Even your footsteps become part of the story now, pressing briefly on stone that will remember the pressure. Even after you are gone, you return to the cliff where you began. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows across the layers. You sit again, your back against the same stone, and this time it feels familiar. Not just an object, but a companion. You close your eyes and listen. Beneath your spine, the earth continues its silent weaving, and somewhere, deep within a fold, not yet revealed, another story waits. Another whisper, another becoming, but that is a dream for another night. Asterisk, you return to the stone one last time. The same sun-streaked cliff where your journey began, now resting under a gentler sky. The wind touches your skin like an old friend, and you lean back into the memory of rock, aware that it remembers you. You feel it in the curve of the layers behind your spine, in the warmth held from the day. Everything is familiar now, and yet everything is still moving. You once thought of stillness as silence, as pause. But the earth has taught you otherwise. It has shown you that what seems unmoving is simply moving too slowly to see that beneath your feet, plates slide past one another, grind, part, and press again. That the deepest quiet is not absence, but presence, pressure, held like breath. You breathe deeply and feel it. The slow rise of your chest mirrors the slow lift of mountains. The pulse at your neck echoes the subtle shift of fault lines beneath ancient plains. The stillness is only an illusion. Every rock you've touched, every valley you've walked, every wave that kissed the shore, all of it is part of the earth's motion, drawn out in a rhythm longer than any human heartbeat. You think of Pangaea. Again, that great singular land that once cradled all the earth's life in one wide sweep of stone. And how it broke, not from violence, but from the inevitability of movement. You think of Africa's slow northward dance, India's rush into Asia, the curling edges of South America stretching toward the Pacific. These are not endings. They are conversations continued across eons. Your fingers brush the ground. You feel more than texture now. You feel time. Not in the ticking of a clock, but in the slow settling of sediment, the rise of magma, the erosion of mountains, the rebuilding of shorelines. Time here is not linear. It loops and layers, folding itself into the geology. And you, a small breath in the span of Earth's lungs, are listening. Beneath you, minerals rearrange themselves. Atoms move through crystal latticework, reshaping under pressure, heat, and time. The rock does not resist this transformation. It yields, reshapes, becomes. You begin to understand that the earth is not fixed. It is a verb, and so are you. You think of the volcano's glow, now far behind, and the oceanic rift stretching still. You remember the mountain ridges that refused to bow, and the earthquakes that whispered urgency in the deep. You carry them all within you, moments of learning and unlearning, of feeling the planet not as object, but as rhythm. Even now, the continents drift, but you do not grieve their parting. You see the beauty in their wanderings, like travelers, with old names finding new stories. They write the world anew with every inch of movement. You trace their paths in your imagination. Australia slowly spinning north, Greenland shifting its icy gaze, the islands of the Pacific dancing on the edge of hotspots. Born again in bursts of molten breath, you lie back and close your eyes, and a